Now, the speakers are familiar with the rules within many systems. Still, however, most of these systems in larger terms are somewhat connected with your own kind of reality. There are an infinite number of inner universes. Only the very highest, most developed Gestalt consciousness can be aware of anything like their totality. In this larger context, then, the speakers must be called local. There is something like a chart mapping many of the nearby systems of reality, and I hope someday in your terms to make this available. In order to do so, Rupert must be trained somewhat more intensely. There are points of coincidence where under certain conditions entry may be made from one of these systems to the other. They need not exist separately in space as you know it, of course. These are called coordination points, where one camouflage merges into the other. Some of these are geographical in your system, but in all cases, the tuning in of consciousness is a necessary preliminary. Such entries can only be made in an out-of-body condition. Each individual in his dreams has access to the information possessed by the speakers. There are adjacent states of consciousness that occur within the sleep pattern that cannot be picked up by your EEGs. Adjacent quote-unquote corridors through which your consciousness travels. The higher centers of intuition are activated while physically oriented portions of consciousness remain with the body. The quote-unquote absent portion of the self cannot be traced through brain patterns, though the point of its departure and the point of its return may show a particular pattern. The quote-unquote time out itself, however, will not be detected in any way, the tracing showing only whatever characteristic patterns was being given immediately before departure. Now, this happens in every night's sleep. Two areas of activity are involved, one very passive and one acutely active. In one state, this portion of consciousness is passive, receiving information. In the next stage, it is active, as it takes part through action. The concepts given it are then vividly perceived through participation and examples. This is the most protected area of sleep. The rejuvenating characteristics enter in here, and it is during this period that the speakers act as teachers and guides. This information is then often interpreted on return by other layers of the self, such as the body consciousness and subconscious, where it is formed into dreams that will have meaning to these areas of the self, and where general teaching, for example, may be translated into practical advice involving a particular matter. Now, there are several very definite stages of sleep, and they all perform various services for the personality. They are also signals for different layers of consciousness, realization, and activity. They are accompanied by some physical variations, and there are some variations having to do with age. In our next chapter, I will speak of these in some detail. For now, it is sufficient to realize that specific steps, definite alterations, occur as consciousness is shifted from the exterior to the interior reality, and that these changes are not random, that consciousness leaves through a very predictable route to its many destinations. Through the ages, the speakers have taught dreamers how to manipulate in these other environments. They have taught them how to bring back information that could be used for the good of the present personality. According to the intent, present purpose, and development, an individual may be aware of these travels to varying degrees. Some have excellent recall, for example, but often misinterpret their experience because of conscious ideas. It is very possible for one dreamer who is a speaker to go to the aid of another individual who is having some difficulties in an inner reality within the dream state. The idea of guardian angels, of course, is highly connected here. A good speaker is as effective within one reality as he is within the other, creating psychic frameworks within physical reality as well as within interior environments. Many artists, poets, and musicians are speakers, translating one world in terms of another, forming psychic structures that exist in both with great vitality, structures that may be perceived from more than one reality at once. There are also various states of consciousness in waking life upon which you do not focus, and of which you are usually quite unaware. Each state knows its own conditions and is familiar with a different kind of reality. Quote-unquote you presently have a once-centered consciousness, in that you close off from your experience these other stages of consciousness in which other portions of your entire identity are intimately involved. These other stages of consciousness create their own realities as you create your own. The realities are, therefore, byproducts of consciousness itself. If you could become aware of these, they might appear to be other places to you, rather than realms or fields of different kinds of activities. If you probe into these realms, you will be forced to perceive them with the root assumptions of your own system, translating feelings of warmth and comfort, for example, into images of warm shelters or buildings, or feelings of fear into images of demons. On occasion, even in waking life, a personality may spontaneously shift gears, so to speak, and suddenly find himself for a second or perhaps a few moments within another such realm. Disorientation usually occurs. There are those who do this quite deliberately with training, but often they do not realize that they are interpreting the experience they have with the values of their quote-unquote home consciousness. All of this is not as esoteric as it might seem. Almost every individual has had bizarre experiences with consciousness, and knows intuitively that their greater experience is not limited to physical reality. Most dreams are like animated postcards, brought back from a journey that you have returned from and largely forgotten. Your consciousness is already oriented again to physical reality, the dream, and attempt to translate the deeper experience into recognizable forms. The images within the dream are also highly coded, and are signals for underlying events that are basically not decipherable. The speakers help you in the formation of dreams which are indeed multidimensional artistic productions of a kind, dreams existing in more than one reality, with effects that dissect various stages of consciousness that are real, in your terms, to both the living and the dead, and in which both the living and the dead may participate. It is for this reason that inspirations and revelations are so often a part of the dream condition. Divorced from physical focus, you are in a better position to hear the speakers, to translate their instructions, to practice with the creation of images, and to be guided in the methods of maintaining the health of the physical body. In the most protected areas of sleep, the apparent barriers between many layers of reality vanish. You are aware, for example, of some probable realities. You choose which probable acts you might want to actualize in your system. You follow other probable acts through in the dream state. You do this individually, but you also do it en masse on national and global levels. Consciousness at different levels or stages perceives different kinds of events. In order to perceive some of these, you have only to learn to change the focus of your attention from one level to another. There are minute chemical and electromagnetic alterations that accompany these stages of consciousness, and certain physical changes within the body itself in hormone production and pineal activity. You usually glide from wakefulness through to sleep without ever noticing the various conditions of consciousness through which you pass, yet there are several. First, of course, with various degrees of spontaneity, there is an inward turn of consciousness away from physical data, from worries and concerns of the day. Then, there is an undifferentiated level between wakefulness and sleep, where you act as a receiver, passive but open, in which telepathic and clairvoyant messages come to you quite easily. Your consciousness can seem to float. There are varying physical sensations, sometimes of growing large, sometimes of falling. Both sensations are characteristic of moments in which you almost catch yourself, almost become aware of this undifferentiated area, and then translate some of its experiences into physical terms. The sensation of largeness, for example, is a physical interpretation of the psychic expansion. The feeling of falling is an interpretation of a sudden return of consciousness to the body. This period can last for only a few moments, for half an hour, or can be returned to. It is a cushioning, supportive, and expansive stage of consciousness. Suggestions given during this time are highly effective. Following this period, there is an active state that can occur of pseudo-dreaming, where the mind busies itself with physical concerns that have managed to cling through the first two stages. If these are too vigorous, the individual may awaken. This is a vivid, intense, but usually brief stage. Another undifferentiated layer follows, this time marked quite definitely by voices, conversations, or images, as consciousness tunes in more firmly to other communications. Several of these may compete for the individual's attention. At this point, the body is fairly quiet. The individual will follow one or another of these inner stimuli to a deeper level of consciousness, and form into light dreams the communications he is receiving. Somewhere during this time he will go into a deeply protected area of sleep, where he is at the threshold to other layers of reality and probabilities. At this point, his experiences will be all out of context to time as you know it. He may experience years, though only minutes have passed. He will then return toward physical reality in an area marked as REM sleep by your scientists, where physically oriented dream productions will be created, putting the knowledge he has gained into use. The cycle would then be repeated. Almost the same kinds of fluctuations and stages occur even while you are waking, however, though you are even less aware of them because then the egotistical self acts quite purposefully to blanket out these other areas of experience. The precise stages are present beneath waking consciousness, however, and with the same chemical, electromagnetic, and hormonal fluctuations. You simply are not aware of what your consciousness is doing. You cannot yourselves keep track of it for 5 full minutes of your time. The dimensions of it can only be sensed by those determined enough to take the time and effort required to journey through their own subjective realities. Yet intuitively, each individual knows that a part of his experience escapes from him all the time. When you suddenly cannot remember a name that you should know, you have in essence the same kind of feeling of which you are always subconsciously aware. The purpose of the speakers is to help you correlate and understand this multidimensional existence, and to bring as much as possible of it to your conscious attention. Only by learning to feel, or sense, or intuitively perceive the depths of your own experience can you glimpse the nature of all that is. By becoming more aware of your consciousness as it operates in physical life, you can learn to watch it as it manipulates through these other, less familiar areas. Probable realities are only probable to you because you are not aware of them. Now, these stages of consciousness are all a part of your own reality. A knowledge of them can be most useful. You can learn to, quote-unquote, shift gears, stand aside from your own experience, and examine it with much better perspective. You can prepare questions or problems, suggesting that they be solved for you in the sleep state. You can suggest that you will speak with distant friends or convey important messages that you cannot convey verbally, perhaps. You can bring about reconciliations, for example, at another layer of reality, though you cannot do so in this one. You can direct the healing of your body, telling yourself that this will be accomplished by you at one of the other levels of sleep consciousness, and you may ask for the aid of a speaker to give you any necessary psychological guidance that is needed to maintain health. If you have particular conscious goals, and if you are reasonably certain that they are beneficial ones, then you can suggest dreams in which they occur, for the dreams themselves will hasten their physical reality. Now, unconsciously, you do many of these things. You often go back in time, so to speak, and relive a particular event so that it has a different ending, or say things that you wish you had said. A knowledge of one state of consciousness can help you in other states. In a light trance, the meaning of dream symbols will be given if you ask for them. The symbols may then be used as methods of suggestion that will be tailored for you personally. If you discover, say, that a fountain in a dream represents refreshment, then, when you are tired or depressed, think of a fountain. In another layer of reality, of course, you will be creating one. In the most protected areas of sleep, you are dealing with experience that is pure feeling or knowing, and disconnected from both words or images. As mentioned, these experiences are translated into dreams later, necessitating a return to areas of consciousness more familiar with physical data. Here, a great creative synthesis and a great creative diversification takes place, in which any given dream image has meaning to various layers of the self, on one level representing a truth you have lived, and on other levels representing this truth as it is more specifically applied to various areas of experience or problems. There will be a metamorphosis, therefore, of one symbol turning into many, and the conscious mind may only perceive a chaos of various dream images, because the inner organization and unity is partially hidden in the other areas of consciousness through which the reasoning mind cannot follow. The unconscious and subconscious areas, however, are aware of much more of this information than the ego, for it receives only the minute residue of dream material as a rule. The speakers therefore may appear within dreams as historical characters, as prophets, as trusted old friends, or in whatever guise will impress the particular personality. In the original experience, however, the true nature of the speaker is apparent. The production of dreams is as quote-unquote sophisticated an endeavor as is the production of the objective life of a given individual. It is simply living on different terms. These various stages of consciousness and fluctuations of psychic activity can also be examined through direct experience from the waking state. In the following chapter, we will let you become more aware of these ever-active portions of your own reality. End of chapter.